It's not painful. But I say, how did you manage to do that? Well, look there. Now look there. Now, can you see it? Funny. Funny, you see, you're not moving your hand, but you're moving the muscle. And that was exactly a surprise too. Now, of course, this is not complete, because the question is this is a frozen shoulder? You move it, look, look. She doesn't know how to do it even now. Look, if I move the hand back, she can. But look, I want to move the shoulder back. Look, not to move, use the same muscle. Then you find that she actually never did it herself. And the body is just as bad as that chap with the frozen shoulder. And hence, that's what you're doing in order to unfreeze the shoulder in our brain. Because now, look, look, there, once you've got that, you find that you can't do this. Look, unless, look, can you see? Look, the arm is there, but the body moves, and moving that muscle, the pectoral, which she can't move. Look, it already does. Look, look, look. Now, can you see? All right, yeah, thank you. Good idea. Now, what we are doing here is doing that kind of thing. We move the heavy, strong part of ourselves, which moves 100th part of what the legs moves, in order to enable the leg to move. Just like that shoulder is motionless, so that the arm can go high and go far away. But both must move. And if you change the movement of the muscle, is the same, only it's attached to one heavy part and the elongated part. And of course, both the push and the pull of the muscle is the same. Pulls the body to the leg or to the arm as much as the hand is pulled towards the body. You got it? Now, that being so, when you put your feet as you do, now lift the feet off the floor like that, and then you will realize that's what you normally do. It's the same muscles. Look, it's the same muscles that if you try now to move, sit like that, move the pelvis 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Can you see that's the same muscles? Yeah. Now put the feet on the floor and move the pelvis. Then you will see actually that the knees open and close, open and close. In other words, the hip joints are completely unattached to the body as far as contraction of muscles goes. Look, that's right. When you move the pelvis back, look, if when moving that this way, the legs open, then obviously the muscles that hold the legs together don't work. You try. That's right. No, don't put the legs on the floor and do it. Can you feel now that the knees, the hip joints, now when you go move your stomach forward and the pubis down, the knees open. And now if you take the skeleton, he will do it without muscles, without the brain. He will do the same thing, because you can see that if you take the legs like that, both legs, and move this thing, look what the knee does. Ploop, 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 ploop. In other words, we use the muscles that work the legs. Are quiescent, have nothing to do as far as the leg movement. But we move the pelvis, which is the same muscle, and will do the movement that the legs does now. Look, that movement would be done with the pelvis. If you're in a standing position, if you try to do that with the pelvis, your leg would do that. If you lifted your legs, what they do now, that would be the same muscles attached to your pelvis would do that. I don't know whether you really understand, because as you're all very logical and use your old-fashioned patterns, you cannot understand that. You can only guess, but feel it. But once you felt it, you'll be able also to understand. You remember once we told you that I do and understand. Before you do, therefore you have to learn to do without understanding. And that was some of you objected. They wanted to know how they do it. I asked them, how do you swallow? How do you digest your food? How do you know when to, how do you understand when to sneeze? We don't know anything else until we do it. We can do it without knowing, and we can do without knowing the rest of our life. And something in stable, comfortable conditions, it's the ideal thing. You don't have to think, you can only exist.
Okay, so what's that all about?
Proximal brain.
Distal. Proximal distal. Yep, so that's his version of what I... So that's his version of what we were talking about yesterday with the proximal and distal. And you see that he had them doing what I had you doing yesterday to experience that is the same as that. Right? Do you want to just do that again? Just to remind yourself what that felt like? This idea about... Now, you're just doing it so easily today. Why is that? What have you been practicing over the evening? Makes sense now, right? But it makes sense, and it hits what he's saying. You know, it's partly understanding, but it makes sense in your body now because it's not like you're thinking anymore. And then taking the pelvis towards the legs. This was such. Do you remember yesterday? It was such a struggle. You'll go and lifting your legs and this and that and the other. Now bringing your pelvis forwards. Yippee! You can clap your legs in the air. You can do Russian dollies. You can do, you know, you can just do whatever you like because you've learnt this relationship. I'm going to say unpacked. It's such a wanker word, isn't it? You've unpacked it. You know, the organisation around your pelvis with all of these funny movements, and you think, that, well, is it magic or is it just really magic? Of course it's magic, but you can understand it. It's magic that you can understand. And again, the rolling the pelvis forwards a little easier, and so forth. Is that? Sorry? Feldini, that's right. So that's why we're doing the proximal. That's why we've been banging on about the proximal distal for the last two days, because it becomes a big part of when we're working with people with FI. But partly, you can see now that by making you, I haven't made you do anything, but by learning to mobilise the middle of you, the proximal relative to the distal, it's, you know, you've all felt these changes in your walking, you've now felt the changes in the actual movement itself and all the rest of it. But we use it a lot in FI, and we use it a lot to sneak up on the nervous system. So what he was saying with the frozen shoulder business, anybody, well, Robin could talk to us for 3 days about frozen shoulders, because she's really good at them. And she's really good at unfreezing them now too, aren't you? Look at her. Yeah, she can just do the Egyptian business. So she's been there, done that. But what he was saying with this is that we sneak up on the brain, because if I just borrow Zena, for example, and he was, you know, he was being a little bit kind of cavalier with that woman, but what he was saying was this pattern, the sensation of this movement is so associated with pain, and the muscles around the joint have become so protective and so organised to hold that shoulder still. But it's the opposite. Like at the moment, you know, with your pelvis was organised to stay still and you moved your legs, right? And then we flipped that around and you became organised to move your pelvis and keep your legs still. So in a painful situation like a frozen shoulder, the brain has done that. It's learnt how to keep the centre, actually stop the distal moving, but it hasn't learnt how to keep the proximal still. So if you do what the body wants to do, keep the distal still, but then trick the proximal to move around it, the brain didn't know to put up up the fences for that movement. Right? It doesn't have a defence for that movement because it doesn't recognise it as the same. So instead of him doing that, or then he actually takes the central part, the girdle. He was saying the shoulder. I'm taking the shoulder up and down. He means the shoulder girdle. Well, in our language, he means the shoulder girdle. So that he's actually doing this. So what he's saying is that the humerus is staying still. But here, the relationship between the girdle here and the humerus is that the arm is actually relatively inward. And if you take the shoulder girdle down, the angle between the girdle here and the arm is opened, so it's actually relatively that. But you can't, it's hard to see that, but that's actually what he's doing. So instead of changing the angle from this end, he's changed the angle from this end. And it's so sneaky. And then you can do the same thing if you're out here. So instead of him keeping this fixed, like the proximal fixed and taking the distal forwards and backwards, he keeps the distal fixed and he takes this forwards and backwards, because the brain doesn't know that that's the same movement and it's not got a defence about it. So then you can show the brain, look, all that funny defensive stuff you're doing, you don't have to need to do it. And it can be quite magical. I remember, I won't mention the name, but it was one of my favourite colleagues gave Robin, do you mind me saying this? Remember she gave you an FI and she did all this stuff and Robin had a really sore shoulder and it was very restricted in movement, wasn't it? And this person, who is a fantastic practitioner, gave you a lesson and she got a bit carried away. Do you remember? Do you remember? And you felt fantastic because it did. It actually got right in under all the defences that your body had put up around this inflamed shoulder. Of course, the next day it was hell on wheels. So you can overdo it. I'm not mentioning any names. It was great. I mean, because we were all watching this FI going, wow. Wow.
Julie.
Hell no. No.
Just keep guessing.
Any name you throw at me, I'm going to say, hell no.
So you can overdo it.
I think I've just died. I think that, because it's actually half past. It dies at half past. So good. So that's it. The money's run out. You can't. So you can overdo it. But I mean, I think that was, that was a fantastic FI. And the person in question admitted afterwards that he or she just was so in love with his shoulder and just so intrigued by what it could do that he or she did get carried away and it's got bad. Did he or she apologise the next day or so?
He or she was going to leave me for another 24 hours to undo and see what happened. I said, please don't do something.
And then what happened?
I got another little bit of an FI.
And where did you end up after that? Still in a good space?
Better than okay.
Yeah.
Well, not in a horrible space.
Yeah. So that was just too much for your system at that time.
Yeah.
And so I mean, you don't have to dwell on the fact that you can't, FIs can stir people up. That's very rare. Actually.
So in that sense, the nervous system overreacted. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Afterwards, it got really alarmed.
And it said, "Oh my God!"
Really anxious. Like, no, I'm sorry, that was too much too quickly. Way too much, way too quickly. I don't know what's going on, so I'm going to batten down the hatches again. And and then of course you have that disappointment.